Namaste and a very good morning, India. When you scroll through the news, it feels like 100 different stories all shouting for your attention, right? A business scandal here, a political drama there, a sports victory somewhere else. But what if they aren't separate stories at all? What if they're all just different threads of the same, single, massive story? Well, today we're going to try something a little different. We're going to take all the headlines from one single day, August 24, 2025, and connect all the dots to show you the one big story of a nation hitting the fast-forward button.
All right, class, settle down, settle down. Here's our lesson plan, our roadmap for today. First, we're going to look at old structures, new pressure. Basically, what happens when the old ways of doing things get squeezed. Then we'll get optimistic with building the new India. After that, we'll zoom out to see India on the world stage, then dive into the fascinating battle over the story. Who gets to tell our history? And we'll wrap it all up with the thing that powers everything else, the human spark.
Okay, let's dive right in. Our first lesson is all about pressure. Think about it. What happens when old systems in finance, in politics, even literal physical walls, smack right into the forces of the modern world? Well, as we're about to see, some things bend, some adapt, and some things, well, they just break.
Let's start with a number that's so big, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. 2,929 crore rupees. That is the absolutely staggering amount that the CBI is alleging was at the heart of a bank fraud scheme involving Anil Ambani's company, Arcom. The claim is that a massive loan from the State Bank of India was just diverted. Now, this isn't just another business story. This is a massive stress test on one of the oldest pillars of our economy, the banking system. It shakes public trust and forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Are the old guardrails we built to protect our money actually strong enough for today's world?
And you see, this case is so much bigger than just one company. This is putting India's entire new rulebook for bankruptcy, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, on trial for everyone to see. Think of the IBC as a completely new system, designed to clean up the old messes when big companies go bust. But the real question, the one everyone's been asking, is simple. Can this new law finally hold the people at the very top personally accountable for a company's collapse? Or will they find a clever way to just walk away, like in the old days? This Arcom case, it's pretty much the final exam for that very question.
Now what's fascinating is how pressure can come from thousands of miles away. A single rule change in the United States just sent a shockwave through countless small businesses right here in India. For years, you had this simple, helpful rule. Artisans, small sellers, they could ship packages up to $800 to the US completely duty-free. It was a lifeline. Now, poof, that lifeline is gone. And the result is immediate pressure. An old, reliable institution like India Post has to suspend most of its services. A dependable, old-world system gets completely jammed up by the realities of our modern, globalized world.
And this pressure, it also has a way of exposing some pretty big cracks in our political culture. You can't make this stuff up. We have a Congress MLA from Karnataka arrested by the ED for his alleged role in a huge online betting network. We're talking 12 crore in cash and 6 crore in gold seized. But wait, here's the twist. This is the part for our lesson in how not to be subtle. While he was being investigated for illegal betting, he was apparently trying to lease a casino. I mean, you have to admire the nerve, right? But it really shows an old style of politics, one that just assumes it's untouchable, now cracking under the bright, hot lights of modern investigation.
And sometimes the pressure isn't financial or political. Sometimes it is just raw, devastatingly literal physical force. Up at the magnificent Amber Palace in Jaipur, a wall that was built back in 1976 specifically to protect the palace elephants, has collapsed. For nearly 50 years, it stood there, a quiet protector doing its job. But it just couldn't stand up to the sheer physical pressure of today's extreme weather. It just crumbled after some unusually heavy monsoon rains.
And this isn't just a sad story about a broken wall. This collapse is a huge flashing warning sign. It highlights a profound challenge that our ancestors never had to think about. The beautiful, strong structures they built to last for centuries are now facing an enemy they were never designed for: climate change. And that brings up this massive, complicated question. How do you protect our heritage, our history, from a future its builders could never, ever have imagined? We're realizing it's no longer just about restoring the past, it's about retrofitting it to survive our future. Okay, so we've seen the cracks. We've seen the old structures groaning under the strain. But that's only half the story, right? Because for every old system being tested, a new one is being built.
So let's turn the page. Let's look at the blueprints, the plans, and the really ambitious, sometimes difficult work of laying the foundations for the India of tomorrow. Let's start in Tripura. It's a state where fish is a staple for just about everyone. The government there has set this wonderful, ambitious goal to double the income of its fish farmers and become totally self-sufficient in fish production. I mean, that is textbook nation building right there. It's all about creating local prosperity. But every great plan comes with a pop quiz, and the big one-word question here is how. How exactly do you pull that off?
And that how is where it gets tricky. It's a classic development puzzle. If you just tell farmers, hey, produce more fish, you could end up doing serious damage to the local lakes and rivers. That's a huge environmental risk. And okay, let's say you do grow more fish. How do you get them to the market while they're still fresh? That needs a massive investment in logistics. Better roads, cold storage, reliable trucks. It's this constant balancing act. Building a new India isn't just about growth, it's about smart growth, solving these complex equations so we don't create a whole new set of problems for the next generation to deal with.
Now, from a big, complicated puzzle to a solution that is just so beautifully simple and effective. Check this out. Small farmers are getting equipped with these solar-powered rice mills, and this one single, small-scale innovation completely rewrites their economic story. See, they no longer have to sell their raw paddy for a low price to some middleman. Now they can process it themselves, right there in their village, and then sell the finished, much higher value rice directly to the market. They take control.
And the result? Bam! Their incomes have effectively doubled. This is a perfect example of what experts call appropriate technology. It's not about having the flashiest, biggest, most complicated gadget. It's about having the right tool for the job. This simple solar mill empowers farmers, it cuts out the middleman, it even increases the amount of usable rice by a third. And in the end, it achieves that big, ambitious goal. This is how you build a nation, not just from the top down, but from the ground up.
Okay, let's scale up. Let's go from a village rice mill to a massive piece of city infrastructure. I want you to picture Hyderabad's outer ring road. It's this huge 158-kilometer concrete loop around the city, and right down the middle, you have the median strip. It's basically unused land. You could call it dead space. So here's a thought experiment for you. What do you do with all that empty space? Can you bring it to life?
The answer is just genius. You take that existing infrastructure, that dead space, and you build something new and productive right on top of it. By lining that median with solar panels, you create a 100-megawatt solar corridor. That's enough clean energy to power tens of thousands of homes, and it's generated from the space between lanes of traffic. You get a massive green energy boost without needing a single extra square inch of land. Now that is the kind of smart, efficient thinking that's building a new, sustainable India.
But listen, building a new India needs more than just concrete and solar panels. You also have to build inspiration. And today marks the country's second National Space Day, celebrating that historic, incredible landing of Chandrayaan-3 on the moon. This isn't just a pat on the back for the scientists, it's an investment in our future. You build a nation with steel and infrastructure. Absolutely. But you fuel a nation with dreams, with ambition, with a sense of wonder. That's what this day is really about. Planting a seed in a young student's mind today that might just lead to them building Chandrayaan-4 tomorrow.
Okay, class, we've looked inward at the old things breaking and the new things being built. Now let's zoom out, let's pull the camera way back and look at how India is engaging with the rest of the planet. This next section is all about diplomacy, about navigating shared challenges, and about finding our place on a very complicated world stage.
First step, let's talk about the hugely important relationship with the United States. President Trump's new pick for ambassador to India is not a career diplomat, someone who spent decades learning the intricate dance of foreign relations. Instead, it's a close political aide. So think of it like this. A career diplomat is like a professional translator, fluent in protocol and nuance. A loyal political aide, on the other hand, is more like a direct hotline straight to the boss. It's a very different strategy, and it sends a clear signal that this administration is prioritizing personal relationships and direct channels over the old traditional ways of diplomacy.
And here we have a global story. That is a really stark reminder of how deeply interconnected our biggest challenges are. A brand new scientific study is warning that as the planet warms, the natural home of fruit bats that carry the deadly Nipah virus is getting bigger. It's expanding. These bats are moving into new areas, and that could potentially bring a very dangerous virus into contact with people who have no immunity and with healthcare systems that are totally unprepared.
So let's be really clear about what this means. This study completely reframes how we have to look at these global threats. The climate crisis is a public health crisis. They are not two separate subjects you study in school. They are one and the same story. A virus doesn't care about your passport. A changing climate doesn't stop at a border. This is a massive signal that 21st century foreign policy has to have global health and climate science right at the very top of the agenda.
All right, let's shift gears. We've talked about geopolitics and big systems. Now let's talk about a different kind of conflict. The battle over our own story, our own narrative. Who gets to be called a hero? What did a social movement truly stand for? These are not quiet academic questions that you just debate in a classroom. Oh no, they are being actively fought over right now, in our society, in our movie theaters, and even in our courts.
This timeline here of the Patidar agitation is a perfect example of how the story of a modern movement can evolve right before our eyes. A decade ago, it started as a pure protest movement. People were on the streets demanding reservations. Just a few years later, it had transformed into a powerful political force, a voting bloc that could influence election outcomes. And now, today, we see its leaders being absorbed into the very same mainstream political parties they once rallied against. It's a fascinating case study of a story changing in real time, from protest to power broker to part of the political establishment.
And sometimes this battle over history isn't about big movements, it's intensely personal. There's a new movie coming out called The Bengal Files, and it's about the 1946 riots. But the grandson of Gopal Mukherjee, who was a key figure back then, has actually filed an FIR against the film's director. He's claiming the movie is twisting his family's legacy. This shows us that history isn't something dead and buried in some dusty old book. No, it's alive, it's personal, and this is the fight for that historical narrative playing out right in front of us.
So we've talked about big systems, complex policies, historical debates, but what is the engine that powers all of it? What provides the pressure that breaks the old and the energy that builds the new? When you boil it all down, it comes down to one thing: the human spark. Those incredible moments of individual brilliance and collective pride that truly write the story. Let's start with a tiny slice of time. I want you to think about this number, 20.63 seconds. It's less time than it takes to tie your shoes, but in that fleeting moment, a sprinter named Animesh Kujar achieved something absolutely monumental. He didn't just win a gold medal. He became the first Indian man ever to qualify for the 200-meter sprint at the World Athletics Championships. That's a landmark moment for Indian sport. But here's the part of the story that'll really give you goosebumps. The how he got there is just incredible. Just a few years ago, Animesh Kujar wasn't a world-class sprinter. He was a footballer. He had zero formal athletics training, none, until a local coach just happened to spot his raw, explosive talent. This isn't a story about an athlete who was engineered for success since he was a kid. This is a story of pure, undiscovered potential meeting one single moment of opportunity. That's the human spark in its most brilliant, dazzling form. And from that incredible moment of individual brilliance, let's look at what happens when a whole team catches fire. In the final of the Durand Cup, one of Asia's oldest and most prestigious football tournaments, Northeast United FC didn't just win, they sent a message to the entire country. A 6-1 victory in a final, that is a statement. This solidifies their position as a true powerhouse, proving that Indian football is growing and thriving far beyond its traditional hubs like Kolkata or Goa. This is the story of an entire region's dream coming together on the football pitch. Wow, so we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? We've gone on quite a journey. We saw an old financial system on trial. We saw historic walls crumbling under climate pressure. We saw a new India being built with solar-powered rice mills and clever highways. We saw global connections being forged through diplomacy and health crises. We saw passionate fights over our past, and we saw incredible achievements in our present. So, after connecting all of these dots, what's the big picture? What does one single day of news actually tell us? Here it is. This is the big lesson for today. None of these stories are happening in a vacuum. They are all connected. The pressure on old bankruptcy laws is what fuels the demand for new, transparent systems. The challenge of a palace wall collapsing from extreme rain is what inspires innovation like a solar highway. The fight over a historical film and the celebration of a new sporting hero are two sides of the exact same coin, a nation trying to define itself in real time and fast forward. Each day's news isn't just the list of things that happened. It's a brand new chapter in that single, complex, sometimes messy, but ultimately hopeful story of modern India. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We sincerely hope that by bringing you just the facts, it helps you connect the dots and form your own informed opinions. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Until then, keep smiling and making this world a better place for everyone. Namaskar.
And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m.